Guys, I got Brad here. I got Jason here. I put them in sequence because there could have been an opportunity for collaboration. I didn't know what was going to happen. I just know that either there would be a really great transition into the next speaker, or best case scenario, guys, we get a 2-for-1 special with my good friends here. Those of you that don't know Jason Paris, he owns like this major mecca painting business that I don't even know the number. It's a lot of numbers that are just, and now it's a holdings company. He's partnering with painting. He's just all over the place. And then Brad Ellison, the startup superhero, showing us all that what can be done in such a short amount of time. I'm in for a treat here, as we all are. So guys, please welcome my good friends, Brad, Jason, and I don't think they think this is real because ultimately there's 263 people here watching. Can we get some emojis to let these guys know that we are live, we are watching, we're not just putting our phones on the side and just letting it play. Guys, look at the chat. We got a lot of people here excited to hear what you have to say. Reminder, all of these are going to be recorded. They're going to be on the Contractor Secrets podcast, so please subscribe to that. So in a month, we will actually start releasing the episodes. But here, you're in for a treat because we're not going to release all the episodes in one day. We'll probably release one per week. You might not see this gem of a show that you're about to receive right now until June. So glad you guys are here. Let's get started. I'll let you guys take it away.
Brad, what should we do?
I thought maybe we could just riff for an hour and just,
Okay.
you probably got some really terrible jokes you want to share.
Yeah. Let me see. I can share a screen.
I thought we agreed no screen sharing.
Well, we agreed on a lot of things that you're going to be surprised about. Wait, okay. Let me share my screen for a few slides. So can everybody see this? This is
Yes.
this is a picture for the introduction. This is my topic, building a team that represents your standards.
So you and I decided we're going to do this kind of back to back. We'll do it like interview style. So for the first half hour, we're going to indulge you, and I'm going to try to keep you on track, see if we can provide some value to the audience, and then we'll flip it over for the second half hour and talk about one of my favorite topics, which is me. Good?
Which is what?
Me.
Oh, okay. I was going to say CrossFit.
Hey-oh. All right. So, Jason.
Yes.
Can you give us an intro to your business world? Like, what's the background with Paris Painting and Olive Holdings?
Great question. Let me do an introduction onto business and personal. But first, I want to turn the tables and say, what is this, Brad?
Have you heard of the term glow up? I've experienced a glow up over the past 8 years since I met Rachel.
There's a lot there.
Okay.
Should I change slides or just keep this?
You can move on.
Okay. All right. So business side, I'll just give a brief introduction. So Paris Painting is what Tanner alluded to. So my last name is Paris. It's Paris Painting. It's a house painting company in Minnesota. Started out with just a paintbrush and a dream. So this is me and my 2 college roommates painting houses. And it started by me going to houses in Plymouth and saying, I will paint your house if you'll be my friend. And that's how I started the company. Now it's a much larger company. So this is called management team. So these are not painters. These are sales reps, project managers, coordinators, and VP level staff. I am not in this picture because there's nothing that I do day to day, week to week, or month to month in the business. But my picture is still prevalent on the website and the flyers and some marketing material. So in some ways, I'm more involved than anybody, if you think about it. Olive Holdings is, I think, what Tanner also alluded to. So this is a larger holdings company. We have 16 painting companies that we've partnered into as equity partners. This is our retreat we had down in Dallas. Also involved investor in Olive Capital. This is where we will buy land, develop it, participate in the build, and then hold it as an asset. So we have 3 buildings that are up live, Albert Lee, Owatonna, St. Paul, 48 unit, 78 unit, 74 unit, and 114 unit. And then the last one we have going on right now is in Faribault. This is me driving to the city hall meeting to try and get the project approved. I went there with a tie because I like to throw people off, and they don't really know if, like, hey, is this like a real business dude or is he just a special boy? And we did get it approved. So this is me and my CFO, and then our buddy Sam celebrating that. So it's kind of a lot that goes in there. Here's kind of a quick recap of what we do. We have Paris Painting. We also have a roofing division, Paris Roofing, which is a couple million. We have the partners that we're involved as 40% equity in. And then these are all phase ones of property development that we're on. We could do 2 other phases, but we got to wait till interest rates come down a little bit. Personal side from Minnesota. So it's cold and it's funny. Graduate from the U of M, econ major. I've been married for 12 years. We have 5 kids, age 9, 7, 5, 3, and then a newborn, like 8 months old. I love going to Alaska with the family. Love doing family meetings. And this slide is not showing anything. Oh, I've been into ultra endurance events lately. So Ironman, long runs, bloody toes, all that kind of stuff. Looking to do Tahoe 200 this year with my friend John Busick. Also have served as the chair of the PCA. So on the board for the last 4 or 5 years, served as chair for 2 years. Currently serving as the ex-chair with Nick as chair. So that's me. Introduction. Great question, Brad. Wow.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the next question is, tell me a little bit about your personal life. Oh, you already went off script.
No, it's because your question said business and personal. So you went off script.
Oh, okay. First off, I do want to acknowledge that it is very impressive what you and your team have done. I mean, you guys are implementing things that most of us haven't even started to dream about, with the painting company, the holdings company, building apartments. I mean, that's all really, really impressive. So as much as I tease you, I do want to take a minute to acknowledge that what you guys are doing is actually very impressive.
I always say, together, each achieves more. Everything meaningful in life you can do with the team.
Yeah. Couple of comments. So Daniel Thayer said, Nick, let me see Jason, let me see your before pics. But you are your before pic right now. We're still waiting for you.
I got to wait for my glow up.
Okay.
I haven't done CrossFit yet.
So you're talking today about teams, right? Building a team that represents your standards. So yeah. I think all of us dream and envision building a team that represents us and what we see as the future for our company. Why does it seem so hard to actually accomplish that, and why do so few people do it?
It's a good question. I think most people don't really know. Great question. I'd say most people don't really know their standards, and you have to start with identifying your passions. And I would say that is a meaty topic.
This is awful.
It's akin to a longer multi-day retreat than a quick presentation. But I'll kind of do my best. So I think, how do you get a team that represents your standards? How rooted are you in your own standards? And this is a quote from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, starting with the end in mind. And kind of like, actually, I don't know where I'm going with this. Start with the end in mind. Stephen Covey, your standards ultimately come from your passions. Okay. Where do your standards come from? They come from your passions. What are your passions? These are things that you are deeply burdened by and uniquely qualified to meet. Right. So people say, well, what are the standards I want my team to uphold? It's like, well, what are your standards? Like, where do my standards come from? I believe that any standard you're going to be consistent and disciplined to upholding has to come through a passion. What are your passions? They're things you're deeply burdened by and uniquely qualified to meet. For myself, I have 3 passions: realizing human potential, founding family legacy, conquering the fear of mammon. This is something, I don't know what these pictures are. This is something I work hard on every year. So I do a 3-day silent retreat where I kind of break everything back down, build it back up, make sure you're setting it, and then do an exercise on that. Do you have another question?
So the standards that it's hard. Is it hard to get your team members to embrace your standards? Is it hard to find people that embrace your standards? Like why is it so hard to find people that represent the standards that we have?
I don't know. I think there are people, so like you have standards, I have standards. There's lots of people that have standards, but getting them to work with you is probably the hard part. And that's where I'm going to dovetail this off to. It's called building a team. So it is a process. This presentation is not called Build It a Team. And if you want to get people to uphold your standards, they have to be their standards. Kind of start with that premise a little bit a couple slides ago where I said, anything you're going to maintain discipline to, they're going to uphold the standard of, you got to be motivated through passion. And so it's hard to lay out your passions onto somebody else. It's more that they need to share that passion with you. And so I'll just say in my life experience, when I'm looking to build a team, whether it's in business or it's in life, or it's growing a family, I want someone who shares my passions, right? Because I'm not asking them to represent my standards. This is probably the quick clip, the TLDR of this video. I'm not asking someone to represent my standards. I'm asking for them to represent our standards, right? And that's because it's something that they're also passionate about. And that happens within the margin of life, right? So like everyone that I work with, they are world-class at representing the standards that I hold. And the reason we're able to do that together is we build relationships. Relationships are the gold standard of life. Okay, little seal there. And that happens within the margin of life as well. You can't build relationships there. So that's why it's hard, I think, and most people get disillusioned with saying, I'm the only one that can do things, is because they're looking to manage people to uphold standards that you kind of need to lead people to instead of managing.
So I think it's easier to manage standards than passions. And you're talking about the two feels like almost interchangeably. Like what? And I'd imagine that some people watching are like, oh yeah, sure. It's so easy to find people that share my passions. It's like virtually impossible maybe from their perspective. So maybe these guys are running into a scenario where they find someone that might be an absolute killer for the role that they're trying to fill in their team, whether it be sales, project management, maybe an executive role. They have all the skills, they have the experience, they have the desire, but the passions don't line up exactly. Should they not hire that person?
You can. It just depends what you want in your business. So you could have someone fill a seat, but it's not going to be, you're not going to get great synergy. It's not going to be a culture builder in the organization.
You're bringing someone up. What if one of the people on your team doesn't really care? They don't have a passion for conquering the fear of mammon,
Sure.
Whatever that means.
Sure. It's going to be hard. So our core values are engaged, accountable, exceptional, grateful. It's hard to be exceptional when you're not extremely accountable, right? It's hard to be accountable when you're not extremely engaged. And I just don't know what gets people engaged outside of their passions. And that may be because I'm not a great manager. So I'm like looking for the easy button of who shares my passions, and you can be self-regulating and self-motivating that way. So that's kind of my own lived experience. But yeah, I just don't think that we want to be exceptional. And if we want to be exceptional, I want people that are going to be highly accountable and highly engaged. And that's going to come from a shared passion, which ultimately leads to a shared standard, which means that I'm not trying to hamstring people and say, follow my standards. And if you don't, I'm going to hit you with a stick or take away your carrot. It's ultimately going to say like, hey, there's something that we're mutually striving towards. How do we get there together, faster, or do it more, go farther? If you want to go fast,
are you interchanging like vision and passion as the same thing?
What was that?
Are you interchanging vision and passion as the same thing?
I think vision is the destination. The passion is the fuel or the why, right? So you could say, what is your purpose? That'd be the destination. That's the vision. And then what's fueling you would be your passions.
So what has this process looked like for you? Like, do you have any practical examples?
Sure. Well, I'll just kind of live like my own lived experience. These are the three passions that I carry. Realizing.
By the way, let's stop there because it's I don't know what reeling human potential means.
Shoot.
Do you have the potential for spell check?
I don't. Okay. Reeling is actually the original Latin of realizing.
Get out of here.
Hebrew.
Get out of here.
So for myself, human potential, family legacy, obviously do with my wife and my kids and my friends who share those passions. Conquering the fear of mammon. That's largely how I impact the world. So that's through work and volunteer. I'll just lay out conquering the fear of mammon. People have a lot of questions about that. What is it? Mammon is kind of the ancient deity of enslavement. So if you ever read the Torah, I would say like, or actually it's kind of the old Bible word that says, money, right? You cannot serve both God and money, right? I kind of say it's beyond that. It's more of like, these are the systems and structures that man architects to enslave itself, right? So what are you enslaved to, right? This could be financial. It could be the spirit of greed. It could be the spirit of lust, of ego, of anger, of gluttony, right? Or just of money, right? So conquering the fear of mammon, it's this obsessive control over our lives. It's kind of fueled by this deep belief ingrained by our culture that we deserve to be comfortable, right? So if I want to enslave a people group, I would say, you deserve to be in control and you deserve to be comfortable. Now go buy stuff. Right? And that's kind of the undercurrent of mammon. Now, how do you combat mammon? So there's the shalom. So deep understanding of your eternal identity, the peace of God, master your self-control. I would say in this order, there's also the understanding of assets versus liabilities and wealth versus income. You can't earn your way out of mammon. You can't self-control your way out of mammon. But in some ways, you only get so far practically without going through this list. So passion alignment, this would be like me and my partners. We want to build a company where all stakeholders can choose to actively overcome mammon, build assets, and generously steward a life of abundant opportunities. Right? People aren't passionate about that. It's like, well, how am I going to manage them? I'm actually not a good manager. I'm too nice. I like to have too much fun. People often overestimate what they can do a year, underestimate what can get done in a decade. That's part of that vision component I think you were talking about. I firmly believe a decade of clear focus can yield generations of freedom. Right? That's kind of that vision. We all come around. We make a living by what we get. We make a life by what we give. Winston Churchill, everybody. Give me a clap emoji for that. Okay, is there any other questions?
Yeah. So again, I hate giving you compliments, but one of the things that I think you are exceptionally good at is identifying what you are good at, what you're not so great at, or maybe more importantly, what someone else would be better at, and releasing control. And I think a lot of people, particularly in our industry, operate with such closed fists, right? No one can do this better than I can. No one can sell for Paris Painting better than Jason Paris. No one can manage a project and deal with customer service issues for Paris Painting better than Jason Paris. What are your thoughts on that? And how have you navigated that?
I'm socially retarded, and two, I don't like to lean into conflict. So it's like, those are not hard lifts. But you could say I did have a big ego for a while and say, what if I am the best sales rep, right? It's the owner, it's the founder. What are you going to do? And that's where you'd say, what is the ultimate vision? And it's kind of like, is this to build a great income where I can just like gobble up the eggs every single day? Or is it to build an asset where I really want to steward that golden goose, right? The goose versus the egg. And that's where I have to make a decision. I'd make more money doing all the sales myself. One, I'd get paid the commission. Two, I'd sell at a higher clip, so I wouldn't pay as much in marketing. And three, they'd probably be more profitable jobs, right? Because I've learned through trauma, right? So you hire a new sales rep, you're not making those commissions, you're paying more in marketing because they have to do more estimates, so they have a lower SR, and the margins are ultimately lower. Why on earth would you do that? You'd want to have a vision to eventually scale beyond yourself.
Yeah.
And without that vision, the people will cast off their restraints, right? So why on earth would you put those restraints on? You have to have a compelling vision. So that's part of it. And then ultimately, every high performing individual gets outperformed by a team of competent people, right? So even if you're an A+ player, a team of Bs will outperform you every day of the week. And the sneaky secret is you find out that you're socially retarded, that there are people who are highly specialized at sales, but they could never start their own company. They're actually better at you at sales. You eventually find that out.
So when you launched Paris Painting, to what level, maybe revenue, did you grow the business before you decided to bring on an actual team member, not painters, but whether it be sales, project manager, admin, whatever? And what role, at what point was that, and what role was it?
I think it was just north of $1 million in 2018 dollars. Should be like $3 million in 2023 dollars with inflation. But it was, I think the first role I outsourced was production, because it is a lot of conflict and I would prefer not to do that. The second role I hired out was sales. And the last one I held on to was coordination. So it's actually production management, CEO, sales, president, coordination.
Okay. So what's your advice for someone that is reaching their ceiling, whether their ceiling's higher or lower than yours, in deciding which role to bring in first?
That's a personal preference. I think sometimes it's practical. So who do you know and has in your network that can fill one of those gaps? It's going to free you up to spend time somewhere else. But if you had like a la carte choice, it's what do you not want to do? Right? You can do the equations of what am I good at? And part of this is driven by your own personal income needs. So what can you afford to give up? Like, hey, I can pay someone to be a coordinator because that's going to cost me, 40, 50 grand a year. I can't pay someone to sell $2 million in the business because I need that income of those sales commissions. Right? I can't live off of the passive returns of equity that this business generates at this point. So a lot of those decisions are driven practically, but if you had all the carte philosophical choice, I'd say go with what you want. Like do what you want. When you have the choices, when the practical choices are covered, do what you want to do. I had a conversation with one of our partners just yesterday, where he was saying, he's getting to a spot where there's an integrator that's being hired into his business. He doesn't have to work in his company. He's like, what should I want to do? I'm like, well, let's wait 6 months, right? Wait till the company doesn't need you and you don't need that income. And until those two practicals are covered, there's a lot of philosophical conversations we can have. But philosophicals don't become prevalent until the practicals are covered.
Yeah. So in an ideal world, we identify potential team members that, share our passions, share our standards. This can't be a foolproof system, right? So what happens when you decide to bring someone on as part of your team and it doesn't work out?
You fire them immediately. No, I mean, that's part of the relationship, right? So I've worked with plenty of people where they've changed over time. The company has changed over time. Nobody's fault, but they're no longer a good fit. That's just the reality. Companies change over time and people change over time. And sometimes it's fair to acknowledge that. I do want to circle back. This is kind of like, I know I'm kind of rambling, going all over this spot. There's like one thing I want to get people to understand is, for me, and my advice to people is building a world-class team that can represent your standards. You're not going to get them to work for you. They're going to want to work with you. And it's kind of like, how would I find people that share my vision, my standards, my passions to want to work with me? Right? The answer is they have to like you. And it's like, well, how would I get people like me to like me? I have to start by liking myself. And if you're not someone that you would want to work with, that you like, good luck finding people that are like you to work with you for a shared benefit. And that's part of when I talk about leadership, like this is leadership. And leadership is 90%, in my opinion, leadership is 90% who you are. I would say in my companies, whenever I look for a leader, I'm 90% hiring that person. I'm 10% hiring their competency. Because leaders, you can't fake it. You can't fake who you are. Managers, managers are like, what can you do? How can you drive people, right? That's like, business box 101. But if you want to lead people and you want them to come alongside with you, you want to find people like you. They're going to have to like you. So you got to start by liking yourself.
Do you like yourself, Jason?
I love myself. I am the apex of creation, but I'm also a worm. So I'm kind of in that constant tension. I think it evens out to a pretty healthy place.
So you either love yourself or loathe yourself, and the average of that is somewhere in the middle.
I think it's a health. Yeah, I think. Yeah. I mean, this would come from the Judeo-Christian paradigm that I operate out of, and that I am the apex of creation. There is no creation like me. I'm made in the image of God. I'm not a deer. I'm a human. I will lord over the angels in the afterlife, as it says. But at the same time, in the comparison of the majesty of God, I'm like a worm. So it's kind of like this tension that I'm always holding of like, I want to like acknowledge my imago Dei, right? The image of God that I hold, but also in contrast to like pure holiness, I'm like a worm, but then it kind of evens out. I'll just tell you, I struggle more with sitting up here. I don't have much of an issue being down here, as you can probably tell, but there's a tension there that I think is healthy to hold.
Anything else you want to share before we wrap up your little section here?
No, you did a great job pulling this together. I would just say an example of amazing people. Micah is one of my partners. He came on board. He runs he runs all of our sales. He does sales coaching with all of our partners, and he is world class. And he's much better than I am. And he would never want to come work for me. But having a shared vision, having aligned incentives, we work together, not for each other or with each other. It's like for a common purpose and a common passion. And this is the team that does this kind of stuff with me. Yeah, that's kind of it. It is 15 past the hour. And so I'm going to stop the share and just see if there are any questions, but then I'll start interviewing you.
Yeah. Any
Let's take 2 minutes
questions?
just see if there's any questions. People are saying, calm down.
Jason gives off an annoying
Knock jokes.
like that.
Okay. Brad, what's up?
Someone asked earlier whether you started the family meetings or if I started the family meetings. Do you want me to talk about that?
I didn't start them, but I'd say, that was something I felt called to. So I do that 3-day silent retreat every year, and I ultimately end up getting convicted to do something pretty impactful. So my wife keeps letting me do it. This was December 2019. I just felt the conviction of starting a family meeting rhythm. I feel like I'm a good dad and a good husband and all those things, just like I'm sure you do. But so I started that in early 2020 with my family, and then have been promoting it. And Brad and I think have worked shoulder to shoulder on that. Nobody started it. We're all, times a circle in that sense.
So the background between mine and Jason's relationship is December of 2021. Jason and I had randomly connected through the Facebook painting contractors group that Tanner started. And I just asked him if I could just come visit his operation. And he didn't know me, I didn't know him. And he said yes. And so the day after Christmas, I flew up there. And so I spent a day with him driving around or at his office and just chit-chatting. And that happened to be the night that they were doing their weekly family meeting. So he said, we're doing our family meeting. You are welcome to join. You can go to your own thing for dinner, whatever you want. And I was like, yeah, let's go. So I sat in on the family meeting and I was blown away with just the structure, the intentionality behind it. And so we adopted at that point. So since then, my family has done 70 family meetings. Most weeks we do that.
So I'll just say, is this sharing? If anybody wants to schedule a meeting, go over family meetings, is something super passionate about. When people ask me for the template, I'll follow up with you for like 2 years on it. So I'll make sure that you do it.
And that was Matt Highfield that asked about it, by the way. I'm sorry, I said it was someone, but it was Matt Highfield.
Okay. So is this QR code sharing? I don't know how to, is my screen sharing again?
Yeah.
Okay. So if anybody wants to talk about family meetings or anything, feel free to reach out to me. Happy to do that.
Cool.
Okay. Now, Brad, I hope you're ready for some Q&A. First of all, can you give me a brief background on the launch of your business?
Yeah. So my background is in sales and management. For about 20 years, I've been selling stuff. My company launched in April of 2022. So we're about 18, 19 months old now. I had run someone else's painting company for a number of years, 5 years, with the intention to buy that business out. And that contract negotiation relationship kind of fell apart. And we tried to renegotiate, try to make it work. And ultimately, we decided it wasn't going to be a good fit. So we walked away. So I ran someone's company for 5 years. I launched in April of 2022. And from April until December 31st of 2022, we sold and produced a little over $1 million worth of painting projects. So we launched and grew pretty quickly.
Question number 2, are you proud of yourself?
Generally, just like you, I have a little bit of self-loathing. I'm proud of what we've accomplished. I'm proud of the life I have, proud of my family, proud of you.
This is more of a question. No, I'll save that for later. Okay. Can you give me a little bit of personal background?
Yeah. So I'm married. My wife, Rachel, we've been married for 7.5 years.
How would you describe that relationship? Contentious, combative, explosive?
Pretty healthy. Pretty healthy. I mean, no marriage is perfect. I think ours is better than most.
Yep. Have you ever had like a guest come over and like yelled in front of them?
All right, so let's get some feedback in the comments here. So Jason came to visit me in Michigan and stayed overnight at my house.
I am from Minnesota.
I'm sorry, to Michigan from Minnesota. And after the kids went to bed, me and Jason and Rachel, my wife, were hanging out, just talking. And Rachel and I were communicating like normal people. A little bit of bickering, but we were laughing. So it was like teasing more than fighting. And Jason got really uncomfortable and actually filmed the interaction because he thought that we were fighting. All right. So holler in the comments if you guys have a relationship with your spouse where you are allowed to tease each other and make jokes.
Is it appropriate to yell?
Just do like a flame emoji.
Yeah.
And if you are a weak individual like Jason, do the heart emoji.
Like almost come to fisticuffs, right?
Right.
But give me some more of that personal background. You know,
All right,
wife.
so I have two kids, a 6-year-old daughter, 3-year-old son, and then another child on the way, gender yet to be determined. I used to be a professional
What point
singer.
will that gender be determined for you?
Once the baby comes out of.
Speaking of which, Brad, why did the transgender man always order a salad?
I don't know.
Because he was a herbivore.
A herbivore.
What about your personal life? Anything hobbies wise beyond your family?
Yep. So I'm a singer. I actually studied musical theater for a couple years in college, and had the opportunity to sing professionally for a few years. And I'm really into fitness. So I'm actually a champion CrossFitter. See, this is a banner right here from one of the competitions I won.
And what was that, just lifting weights, or what else was involved in that banner?
This is actually, so all of the CrossFit competitions that I've won are like put on a weight vest and run long distances. So it's really not CrossFit, but
Cool.
I did win.
So that's interesting background, how it launched, personal background. How do you think we can balance mercy and justice as a society? How do we balance mercy and justice?
Self-awareness that we all deserve mercy. And I think that would balance our, innate desire for justice. I think that justice is important. Like rules and standards need to be enforced. There need to be consequences when we violate those, but also the intentionality behind whatever they need to be justified for.
Okay. Wrong answer. Justice is not something we should be pursuing here on earth. Just to be clear, that joke was very affirming and acknowledging in the language I used. Just want to make sure that's clear. How did year 2 go in your painting company? So that was a pretty interesting launch. And then year 2, I imagine you tried getting your feet under you. What did that look like?
Yeah. Year 2 went pretty well. We had a goal of selling and producing 3 million. We ended up selling close to 3 million, produced, I think, 2.6 million or so. We got moved into an office space. We expanded our management team, expanded our marketing. Year 2 was kind of follow-up to year 1, and we continued our pretty expansive growth. So we went from 0 to $3 million in sales in 1.5 years.
So that, I think I would classify that as explosive. I wouldn't call that linear or slow or cumulative, probably explosive. What are some important factors that led to the explosiveness of that growth?
I think there's probably a few. One of them is I have a pretty firm commitment to not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm self-aware enough to know that I'm not creative or clever, and that other people smarter than me, or not even smarter, but been around longer, have already figured out a lot of the things that work well. So, I had an advantage because I had run another painting company for a few years. It wasn't like I was starting out from scratch. But I had a very insular view of the industry. When I first interacted with you, Jason, was on I don't know if you remember that Zoom call with me, you, Jason Phillips, and Jamie Burkhardt. And we started out just like, hey, go around and introduce yourself a little bit about your company. And being a type A Enneagram 8, I immediately jumped in. I was willing to go first. And I thought that company I was running was the biggest, baddest company in America, right? There's no painting company bigger than ours. And we were at the time, I think we were doing about $2.5 million worth of revenue. So I did it and I felt I introduced myself and felt real good. And then Jason Phillips went next and he's like, yeah, I run a painting company down in Dallas. We're doing like $14 million in revenue. And my eyes got real wide. And then you introduce yourself. You're like, yeah, I'm up in Minnesota. We do like $12 million in painting, but we also have all these other things. So totally we're doing like $30 million in revenue. And I had no idea that those numbers were even possible, right? I just had that tunnel vision. And so it opened up. So I knew how to run the company that I was running. I didn't know what could be done bigger and better and faster until I met guys like you.
Kind of like the 4 minute mile, or I don't know if you've seen this recently.
Yeah.
People have been beating the Tetris game.
Yeah.
Like blocking it out.
Yeah. So I just copied. I looked at companies like yours and a few others. What's working? What did I like about it? So I copied them and tried to just do it a little bit better. I would say another thing that led to our explosive growth is I have no aversion to risk. And so I prematurely spent on things like marketing, and I prematurely had someone come on board as project manager right away. I mean, we hadn't even sold a job and I had a project manager. Now, my project manager was my wife, but had she not agreed to give me 6 months of her time to help launch, I absolutely would have paid a project manager to come on board. So I know a lot of companies, a lot of contractors hesitate to spend money until they can like afford it. But I knew that my marketing systems were not going to generate the leads that I needed unless I spent the money. And I knew that there was no way that we could actually produce the amount of revenue that I wanted to generate if I didn't have someone on board to do it myself. So we prematurely spent on all that. And then the final thing I would just say is we focus a lot on constant improvement. So as I mentioned already, the relationships that I have with you and a bunch of others, literally on a daily basis, sharing ideas, sharing insights, hearing what's worked, sharing my new ideas and getting some critical feedback on whether or not they might work or not. That's been helpful. But also, oftentimes we decide to move forward in Ellison painting when something is just good enough. It's not perfect. So we move forward to like, all right, we got this in place. We got our estimating system in place. We got our marketing tactics in place. They're not perfect, but they're good enough to go. And then constantly improving them along the way. And so that's another thing I think paralyzes companies and inhibits explosive growth is they want everything to be perfect before they actually launch. Well, nothing's ever going to be perfect. That's the dirty little secret, right?
It's a great tolerance for pain as you move through it, right? Willing to be that man in the arena. You were kind of hot on the justice horse earlier. So I'm just curious, in your mind, is inequality necessary in a just society?
Is inequality necessary? I think inequality is inevitable. I believe in capitalism. And so I believe that people should be rewarded for their risk taking and for their efforts. And there are people that will not take risk and there are people that will not work hard. And as a result, there should be some inequality.
You say bring the inequality on ever greater thus to serve capitalism as the ultimate means and the ends.
I think there should be
next question I'll move on to at that point then would be, sorry, do you have something else you want to say?
There should be equal opportunity, but not necessarily guaranteed equal outcomes.
Yeah. So equality is not a virtue to aspire to. Sounds like it's been a pretty easy road to this point. Have there been any stumbling blocks as you've scaled, right? So people would look at you from the outside and say, wow, $3 million, 2 years. That's pretty exciting. Wish I was Brad. Any stumbling blocks along the way?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Made some bad hiring decisions. The second project manager I brought on, we hired kind of out of necessity, and he was a right fit on paper. He had some experience in the painting industry. Turned out to be not a core values fit. It's pretty catastrophic to the business when, I had to fire him in the middle of busy season. So there was that. There was some other personal stuff that went on with some of my staff's family, family sicknesses, out for 6 weeks unexpectedly, back part-time. That was tough. And then, on a much smaller scale, some marketing tactics that weren't necessarily working very well. We had to pivot in the middle of the season. So, I mean, yeah, nothing's perfect. I think one of the strengths of Ellison Painting and my team is we can roll with the punches and we can adjust on the fly and keep things moving. There were a few customers this summer when all that stuff happened that didn't get the best from Ellison Painting. And I actually was talking with one guy this morning, a customer, our like one poor review on Google, and his project was right in the midst of Ron's daughter getting leukemia, and then me firing Brendan and me stepping in trying to, plug all these gaps, put all these band-aids on all these projects, and he just didn't get our best. So it wasn't perfect, but it's heartening to know that we still came pretty close to our goal, in spite of all that.
Yeah. You can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs.
That's what they say, Jason.
Well, I would say probably two questions. When and how should well-being be earned or gifted?
Well-being in what sense?
Be earned or gifted. It's up for you.
Well-being in what sense? What do you mean by well-being?
It's your interpretation of well-being.
So, well, it's hard to accept the premise of the question without understanding exactly what you mean. So well-being meaning like comfort, sustenance, healthy life.
Your paradigm.
Okay.
Mine.
So when should it be, when it should be gifted and when it should be earned?
Yeah. When and how.
Okay. So I think, as parents, we have an obligation to gift that to our children. And so my kids are gifted well-being. From the time they were born, we decided to bring them into this world. They are our responsibility until they are adults. And so it's my obligation to provide them well-being. Now, as they get older, that's going to shift and there's going to be more responsibility on them for their own person. But certainly to start out, that's when it should be gifted. When it should be
This would
earned.
apply just to your family, not for others that are unable to provide for themselves.
Well, I'm talking about my family. You did not give me a definition of the question, and so I'm interpreting it as you instructed. Okay? So I think, well-being for children in general then should be gifted, and maybe we as a society or culture have an obligation to help take care of kids whose parents are not taking care of them. When it should be earned would be adulthood. It's like, all right, at that point, it's time to tighten up our bootstraps. And
you're on your own.
Yeah.
Let's see if you can make your bread. If not, we'll let you starve. Capitalism and Inequality by Brad Ellison. Do you think what you've accomplished is just unique to you, or is it something that others could replicate? I mean, people are looking at that. It's not a very common story. Not everybody's 5'4". What is special about you being a painting contractor owner that maybe others couldn't replicate, or is it something that others could also do on their own?
Why are you the way you are? We can all acknowledge that I'm short, but let's not take 3 inches. I'm 5'7".
Okay.
All right. That's like 2 inches below the average.
I apologize for that comment. By the way, Snow White College wants to know when you're coming home.
I don't know what that means. Because
you're a dwarf. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
You're the worst.
Hopefully this next stage of your business and life comes with a ladder.
Okay. So what was the question? Is there something special about me?
Yeah. This is a pretty special story. Not everybody's 5'7" and also runs a business.
Mm-hmm. So I think me and my business are somewhat of an anomaly. You've said that we're one of the fastest growing companies you've ever seen, right? So not everyone is doing this. I've made the rounds on all the podcasts, and it's always the same story. No one's asking me about how to market for their business or how to recruit salespeople. Everyone wants to talk about how quickly we grew and how we did it. So I think it is unusual. I don't think that I'm necessarily special. I think I do have a unique skill set and maybe unique experience that culminated in being a really good entrepreneur or founder of a painting company. but other people do that as well. What we're doing here at Ellison Painting, I think, is special. So I guess the question, if the question is, can anyone do this? There are others that could do it for sure.
Well, I just think part of your story is that 4-minute mile revelation, where you probably wouldn't be achieving the heights that you're achieving without some role models and proof that it could be done.
My hope is that there will be others that kind of see what I've been doing and hopefully will continue to do and be able to do it bigger and faster than I'm doing it. Right. So that's the hope. But also, can anyone do it? I would say no. I would say the answer to that is no. And one of the stumbling blocks or obstacles to a lot of entrepreneurs is they see Jason Paris and they're like, well, I can do that. If Jason can do it, I can do it. Or they see me now on a smaller scale, and I'm only 5'7".
Sure.
I'm bald, and I'm not that special. Well, if Brad Ellison can do it, then I can do it. And the reality is, not everyone can, and that's certainly not a judgment on them or their worth, their value, their abilities. Maybe it is on their abilities, but what you've done, Jason, and what I'm doing can be accomplished by anyone in the right circumstances if they have the self-awareness to know that they can't do it on their own. So for you realized early that you were a good founder, but you didn't have the skill set to be the CEO, right?
Yeah.
And so you brought Chet on, and Chet then allows you to take it to the next level. Now, I think, and I'm not being rude to you, I think that I can grow Ellison Painting further than you grew Paris Painting before I need a partner. But also, I know that I need a partner eventually. And so I need to bring someone on board that shares my passions, shares my values, shares my, but complements my skill set to fill in all the gaps so that I can continue to focus on the things that are going to benefit Ellison Painting the most. And that person can fill up all those other holes. Yeah. So there's certainly a hesitancy or reluctance among entrepreneurs. And again, we can speak more specifically about our industry. People don't want to give up equity in their company for anything. They would rather scratch tooth and nail to get
what
to
equity?
million.
I'd say what equity?
Yeah, rather than give up part of their business or in partnering with Olive Holdings or bringing on a local partner to help scale to 3 million, 5 million, 10 million. Because most people, what are the statistics? Most painting companies are never going to get past 1 million, let alone scale to 3 or 10 where you're at, right?
Yeah. Great thoughts, Brad. Societal architecture. When and how should power be concentrated or diffused in your mind?
When should power be concentrated or diffused? Well, diffused definitely when power is in the hands of someone with nefarious motives, but at that point it should have been diffused far before that. Power should be concentrated. Well, that's a tough one because I would say I'd want power to be concentrated amongst the people that share my values of, life, liberty, freedom, faith,
inequality.
Not inequality.
Do you think goals should be set by those who are elected through democratic means? So they're kind of representatives, or should it be more meritocracy based in specific domains of expertise? Who should be driving the goals?
So like societal goals?
Yeah. Yep. Or you could say in your own company or your own family or church.
Well, within a company, I don't know if it should be a democracy, though input from the people on the team is important. Ultimately, it's the responsibility of the company's leaders to make the decisions.
Okay,
but
interesting.
I do love meritocracy. No one loves a meritocracy more than me.
Yeah.
Where you put in effort and you get rewarded, and the cream rises to the top, and the best people get to make the decisions. But all right, enough with your stupid philosophical questions.
I have one more, but we can
No,
So
let's
that's
skip
where
it
wait.
because we
All right.
have, I think, 6 minutes or so left in our
Q&A.
3 minutes.
If you asked a question before, too bad. You're not getting it answered. So type a new question in.
All right. What does your average painter make? What do you do when they continuously want raises? So I only use subcontractors. I can tell you the data shows that we are paying on average about $45 per labor hour out to each of our subcontracting crews. So
I'd say, yeah, I apologize. I'm not for, my content's not for everybody.
Are you guys in commercial, residential, or both? So we're primarily residential. So are you, right? Repaints. We do a little bit of
Yeah, I
commercial.
mean, we'll do like an Ellison size company of commercial, but it's just like a fraction of what we do. So,
You guys did $3 million in commercial?
well, tomato. Potato.
Oh yeah.
Oh, for sure, way more than that in all of holdings. If you think about it.
Whatever. So we're like, I think we did like 5% of ours was commercial work, like exterior condos, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Brad, what would be advice for a painting company that's been around for 5 years, making around 1.5 million? All right. If you've been around for 5 years, you're doing 1.5 million. If you're stuck at 1.5 million, then my advice would be you need to identify what's keeping you stuck at 1.5 million, which is usually bandwidth of the owner, and start filling in the gaps. If production is what's holding you back, your obstacle, then you need to hire a project manager to help schedule and produce jobs. If you're not a great sales guy, you need to sell more jobs. If the lead flow is an issue, then you need to spend more in marketing to get more leads. What do you think, Jay?
Sorry, what was the question?
What company that's been around 5 years? Company that's been around 5 years making 1.5 million.
Yeah.
Advice or tips to scale up.
Of profit or revenue?
Assume it's revenue.
Priority management 101. That's what I work on at that point.
Can you explain to him what that means?
How to focus your energy and effort into the items or activities that make the highest impact towards your goals. And don't focus on things that are having a low impact. I mean, if you're at 1.5, that's not bad. But if you're 5 years in, I'd say there's a million things I could point you to, but you're kind of still working on the fundamentals of efficiency or just productivity.
Do you guys utilize anything from Traction, VTO? Yes, we follow the EOS Traction model. You do too, right?
Yep. Yeah, we're a traction-based company.
Yeah.
It's an operating system. It's not the best. It's not the only one, but yeah, something you can execute on.
Okay, let's see. Oh, someone described me as
someone asked here, does the benefit of the many justify the suffering of the few?
Oh, what's your perspective on that, Jason?
What are your thoughts, Brad?
I've given my thoughts on your silly little podcast. Why don't you give your thoughts now?
Does the benefits of the many justify the suffering of the few? No, I'd say it doesn't. I'm not my ethics aren't utilitarian based. So I'm not looking at the aggregate benefit of a society. I'm more means focused, or we call it WERT rational versus ZWEC rational. And I'd probably hold a little more true to that, but
is Tanner signing in to kick us off?
No,
it's that time, guys.
Tanner probably had an opinion on ZWEC versus WERT rational theories.
Major philosophical. Jason, I think you have a podcast, man. I think what we need to do is anyone
just keep it there
deeper into philosophy. Please check out Jason's podcast. Brad, guys, thank you for your time today, giving value. Your relationship is entertaining, to say the least. Let's put it that way. Thank you, guys.